So Kris, you've talked about some of the programs that you feel didn't really work as well, but maybe, I know your program that you talked about here on the YouTube that our users have watched is really more of an amalgamation of a lot of different programs.
That's right.
So what did you pull together that you found useful, that our users might find useful?
Pretty much all the things in the examples that you find in the Learn Speed Read section. I mean, you know, people can develop their own way of speed reading. They just have to know how accelerated reading works or how speed reading works. I think that's what it comes down to. And like we were saying earlier, speed reading, accelerated reading, works on taking information through your eyes rather than through your larynx. And any accelerated reading program works on that same basis, that you have to read with your eyes rather than your larynx, because the larynx is slow. And it's compared to the eyes and how information is transferred, the larynx is slow. And so if there's a way to get information through the eyes as much as possible, then that's the way to do it. So the question then becomes, how do you take the larynx out of the equation? You know, because we're taught to read a certain way, and we're born with that, and we work with that, and then finally we get to a point where suddenly it doesn't work as well as we need it to. And so that's where accelerated reading comes in, and it's a next step, And the best way to describe it is, you walk a certain way, you run a certain way. But there's a certain point in between those two where you have to switch over into a run. You can't just keep walking fast, and then suddenly you're running. Yeah. You're either walking or you're running, or you're power walking or you're running. But there's a switch that happens. It's not gradual. And when you get into the program and you work and you work and you work, you'll notice a switch happen. It's not gradual. It'll switch over.
That's very interesting. You've talked a lot about some of the times when we won't want to use accelerated reading for certain kinds of novels or whatnot. But look at the other side. What are some ways when you have found accelerated reading to be useful? And what are some times when you recommend to someone? Maybe don't use it here, but I would say it's a good idea to use it here.
Well, I mean, it's a good question. You want to use it. If you're good at it, if you're good at accelerated reading and you have a good speed, you can read up to 1,000 words, which is a really good talent. I mean, if you can read 1,000 to 2,000 words a minute, that's a really good talent to have. But you're not going to be reading at that speed continuously, and so you'll notice that once you become that kind of reader where you consistently have that skill, you'll take a text, whether it be a novel, whether it be a textbook, or even if you're reading a magazine or a newspaper, you'll notice that the stuff that you just want to get information from, you'll speed read through it, and the stuff that you're really interested in, you'll slow down, you'll take your time and enjoy it. Okay. And I think that's the thing, is that like you were saying earlier, lots of people think of that speed reading as the Superman thing where everybody flips through an instant, and it's not like that. It's a skill, and you just the stuff you enjoy, you're going to take your time with, and the stuff that you're speed reading with, you just need to get the information. For example, you're never going to speed read poetry. I mean, I guess you could, but you're not going to, because that's meant to be read. It's supposed to be studied, and it's short lines and stanzas, and taken one at a time. But if you're reading a textbook, that's meant for information. Your goal is not to dissect it and analyze this word and that word and how the author used that. Your goal is to get the information there and continue on with your job. And for that specifically, then speed reading is absolutely the way to do it, because that's what it's made for.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Very different distinction there.
Right.
And could you let us know, in your life personally, what have been some times when you've found speed reading to be very helpful, when you're really glad you had that skill?
College.
Okay.
That's pretty much flat out.
And for that, when you were doing your homework for reading, would you speed read, or was that simply before a test, or when did you utilize that?
Pretty consistently throughout college. And the thing is that, when I was in high school, I was a terrible reader. I mean, when I tested myself, I was a senior in high school, I think it was. Tested myself, and I was reading at 75 words per minute, which is extremely slow. I mean, that's like really, because 125 to 250 is average. So I was below average reader, and now I read 500 to 1,000 easily, by using the same things that I showed you guys. And those are the techniques that helped me gain that. And so when I got into it, you know, I was really slow, and you know, when I first started, my initial, you know, boost up was 2 average. You know, when I started speed reading, I was speed reading at average level, and that's how bad it was. But I practiced and I practiced and I practiced, and the summer before I went into college, you know, I had 3 months, and I was just like, this summer I'm going to take it every day. I'm just going to practice reading and practice, and not read for enjoyment, but practice speed reading, practice accelerating my reading speed, and practice on working on my comprehension, so that when I got to college, I could put those tools into use. And so, I mean, textbooks, speed read, you know, articles for class, or especially when you're, I did a couple of creative writing classes, and so for those, I mean, you're just reading text and text and text, and even your fellow students' text, your colleagues and stuff, and so you're reading theirs as well, and there's just a lot of reading. And in order to keep up, you really have to be able to read at accelerated rate, or you have to have no social life whatsoever. And I think that's, you know, that's the thing with the college system, is that you find either kids are reading the material and have no social life and are keeping up their classes, or they have a lighter class load, or they're not really doing the work, and they're, you know, finding ways to get around it.
You know, with some of the practice techniques that you've shown here in our videos, how much of the person's time, if they're doing like you're saying, okay, I'm going to spend the summer practicing, how much of their time should be spent doing those kind of exercises, like eyes looking, and how much should be spent just opening up a book and practicing the reading?
That's a good question. You know, I mean, really, it's like anything. The more time you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. But more than anything, the key is consistency. So it's not, if you want to see results from speed reading, honestly, you don't want to do an hour 1 day a week. You want to do 5 minutes every day. You're going to see a lot more improvement in your reading if you just take 5 minutes, you know, 5 to 10 minutes every day, and, you know, practice on your number exercises, and then practice on speed reading, going through text, and then practice with your vowels, saying those out loud and reading your text, and just spend that, you know, 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, you spend about an hour on it. I mean, that's great, but I mean, you know, if you can only spend 5 minutes, spend 5 minutes, and do that every day, and you'll notice a consistent increase in your ability to read. And that's one of the things that I noticed in my own practice, and the students that I've taken through. The students who work,
how much of their time should be spent doing those kind of exercises, like eyes looking, and how much should be spent just opening up a book and practicing the reading?
That's a good question. You know, I mean, really, it's like anything. The more time you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. But more than anything, the key is consistency. So it's not, if you want to see results from speed reading, honestly, you don't want to do an hour 1 day a week. You want to do 5 minutes every day. You're going to see a lot more improvement in your reading if you just take 5 minutes, you know, 5 to 10 minutes every day, and, you know, practice on your number exercises, and then practice on speed reading, going through text, and then practice with your vowels, saying those out loud and reading your text, and just spend that, you know, 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, you spend about an hour on it. I mean, that's great, but I mean, you know, if you can only spend 5 minutes, spend 5 minutes, and do that every day, and you'll notice a consistent increase in your ability to read. And that's one of the things that I noticed in my own practice, and the students that I've taken through. The students who work